So the first question that people will be looking at is what is AUSTRAC? So AUSTRAC is one of the major Australian regulators. It's known as AUSTRAC, which is short for the Australian Transaction Reports and Analysis Centre. So they're a regulator which manages financial transactions, and their aim is to prevent money laundering and terrorism financing as their primary objective. They also have a supervisory and enforcement role in conjunction with a number of other regulators because of the way they receive, analyse and disseminate a lot of intelligence information that flows through their systems. So they provide this information to state, territory and law enforcement bodies. They also assist with national security, social justice and revenue enforcement. So that means that they're dealing with sending information to Centrelink, to the ATO, to the AFP, to the local police, the state police departments as well. So why is AMLTF a focus of this particular regulator? So AUSTRAC and the government has estimated that there's approximately $4.5 billion laundered in Australia every year. The figure globally, as you would expect, is much, much higher, and there's equivalent regulators around the world. So as commercial and technology developments increase, the capacity for criminals and terrorists to launder money and use laundered money for the financing of terrorism continues to increase as they find new and more sophisticated ways to wash the money through the system. So you'll see there the overarching principle as well is that entities which are meant to be regulated by AUSTRAC, they need to develop systems and frameworks that comply with AML-CTF Act, because if they don't, their business is at greater risk of being used to facilitate money laundering. So there's fines that apply to businesses and individuals that are meant to be complying but don't. The question that you came here today to have answered is whether you need to be registered with AUSTRAC. So there's two factors that you need to consider. The first is whether there's a geographical link. And so what AUSTRAC will look at and what you need to look at in terms of whether you need to be registered with AUSTRAC is whether you're providing services in Australia through business premises, a branch or an office, and that can include a mobile office. Alternatively, if you're an Australian business or organisation but you're providing services through a foreign branch or foreign subsidiary. And the third is if you're a subsidiary of an Australian business or organisation and you provide services in a foreign country. So it's quite a broad net. Really, the link with Australia is quite simple to satisfy. So the first thing that you would anticipate is that if you are in Australia operating a business which has some connection here, you're most likely to get picked up by an AUSTRAC registration. And the second factor, limb that you need to satisfy, if you've satisfied the geographic test, is the provision of designated services. So there's a list of designated services which is in section 6 of the AML-CTF Act, and it covers a lot of different areas of the economy. So the reason why a service will have been designated in the Act is because they have been identified as posing a risk for money laundering or terrorism financing. So you'll see there, as I said before, if you have one or more designated services, which I'll show you on the next page, and you have a geographical link to Australia, which is the slide we previously talked about, you'll be considered a reporting entity and therefore need to be registered with AUSTRAC. So you'll see the list here of the more financial services related designated services, which are listed in section 6. So many of our clients are picked up in this one here, which is the AFSL holder arranging a designated service. So that picks up people who hold an AFSL and are helping their clients to receive any sort of financial product or service. The other popular one which we've seen in the last few years, especially with fintech organisations, is the currency exchange services and the digital currency exchange, as well as the stored value cards and online systems which people are using. So if you've met those two provisions, you'll need to enrol with AUSTRAC, and you'll need to enrol within 28 days of providing a service. Remittance service providers and digital currency exchange providers have an additional obligation. So there's enrolment, which is required for everybody, and registration is required for remittance and digital currency exchange providers. And those two types of services have to be enrolled and registered before they provide a designated service.